A question I'm often asked by friends and family is, why am I no longer in the classroom? Why am I no longer teaching? It's a good question, and to answer that, I really have to go back to why I became a teacher. Like many people, I had a handful of teachers, the ones whose names you remember, who were just outstanding. They were amazing master teachers who created an environment where you wanted to learn, where you wanted to be there. They had projects that were amazing, for those grade levels that they taught that normally you wouldn't have learned in other classrooms. I can remember Mrs. Carroll and Mrs. Penrod and Mrs. Russell, and how we would build we thought they were real, but volcanoes that you actually erupted, that you had to light something with fire and it erupted. Or photography in 5th grade where we actually developed the film. And these are the kind of projects that really get your imagination going and really challenge you. And that's what inspired me to become a teacher. I wanted to create that environment, that classroom for other students, for other children. And so I succeeded for many years in doing that. I was lucky enough to work at a school where the administrator, she allowed the teachers to really have the freedom in their classroom to do these kind of projects. Our administrator was not an educator. She came from business. She was very good at finding talented people and putting together a good team. And she was good at providing us with the resources we needed. But because she was not an educator, she relied on our judgment. She relied on us as professionals, as people who had gone to school for many years to become educators and who had great experience. So she really let us have that freedom in the classroom to create environments that were challenging and interesting for the students, where the students really wanted to be there, where they asked questions, where they really were learning how to be learners. And that was really what I wanted. I didn't want to be somebody who just sat there and worked out of a textbook or handouts or worksheets, somebody who just kind of tried to, get the kids to memorize information, pump that knowledge into their head. No, I wanted to be an educator who showed students how to become learners, lifelong learners. I wanted them to use their critical thinking skills, their reasoning skills, where they could figure out problems without me, where they knew how to find resources, how to look for answers, and how to be inquisitive and question things. And that's really what we had at my school for a number of years. I was doing things in the classroom that the kids normally wouldn't do, and I taught 4th and 5th grades. I was doing things that they wouldn't normally do till middle school or high school. And, we were building things. We had projects. It was busy. And the students were doing activities that many of them didn't know about. And that was really what I wanted my classroom to be, was where they would come to school and it would open their minds to other worlds, to other ideas, and really get them to love education as much as I did. And so our school, which served mostly homeless and at-risk students, really was successful in that. And that was just an amazing experience. We had a group of teachers, a group of educators and administrators that could care less really about test scores. That wasn't our priority. And yet our students still were successful in their standardized tests. But we are always looking for new and innovative ways to teach. We weren't trying to be like everybody else and have some sort of common, teaching practices. And, we really wanted to just try new ideas and explore new things with our students. And that's what made us successful. Now, why I left that, it really wasn't my choice. It wasn't something, I was in an environment, I was in a school, in a classroom where I really wanted to be there, and that was my world. However, education started changing, our school started changing. We were part of a county school district, and politics were brought in, and there was a lot of political activity going on where the supervisors of our county wanted the schools closed. They wanted some of the land to sell. There was a lot of politics involved, and they eventually closed our schools. One of our schools, they did demolish the school even though it was almost brand new, so they could sell the land. And the other school, they ended up giving to a charter school business. And again, there were politics involved where some of the supervisors knew the owners of the charter school business. They went to the same church, and so they ended up giving the school to them. And once that happened, once we saw politics and business become involved in education, things dramatically changed for the worse. It was no longer providing the resources we and our students needed. Instead, it was trying to cut as much as possible, trying to increase class size, cut salaries, bring in their own teachers who they could pay less, their friends. So it really just became an unhealthy educational environment. And that is the primary reason why I left. And I haven't been able to find a school that I would feel as comfortable, and it's along the same time as this was happening. I've seen education change. We've now got these politicians involved that want everything to be the same. They want everything standardized. They want the classrooms, the teachers, the kids all to be the same. And they place this huge emphasis on testing. In my classroom, my kids were always busy. They were working on projects. They were always investigating and exploring. And I typically ignored whatever came from the outside, that you've got to get them all ready for tests. They've got to score well on the standardized test. I didn't pay attention to that. I was there to educate. I was there to guide my students, to provide them with an education that would last them far beyond the classroom, when they were adults, where they would know how to look at things critically, look at information critically, and how to find the truth and find knowledge. So I paid little attention to standardized testing. And even though I didn't focus on that, my students always did well on these standardized tests. But I've seen education change, just like I saw my school change, to where it was now get them ready for tests. We want them to score high on tests. And when the school became a private, or became a charter school business, the new owners wanted us to spend most of the day testing the kids. They wanted us to give them practice tests. They wanted us to give them sample tests. What would they find on the standardized tests? We got to get them to score high so we can get more money from the state, so we can get more students, and it was just a business. It was no longer an environment where they were providing us what we needed as educators. It was just, let's see how little we can spend, how many students we can cram into a classroom, and get those test scores up. And that was really all it was. Forget all this extra activity, all these extra projects. Don't be creative, just do what we tell you to do, and that's it. And that's really what I've seen in much of education. There's this emphasis on testing. We're told all over and over by politicians and businessmen, business people, that our kids aren't scoring as high as other countries. Well, we don't have the same kids. We're not the same as other countries, so they're not going to score the same or as high. And even though they aren't scoring the same or as high as other kids in other countries, we still have one of the best educational systems. Our businesses are still performing very well. Other countries still send students to the U.S. because we have more creativity in our culture and our students, whereas they just are more, facts and just, testing. So I feel that this emphasis on testing and competing with other countries has more to do with politics and business and money, and that's driven this whole, thing where we've got to make everything standardized and nationalized, and it's really just, it's to me, it's ruining education. I don't think every classroom or every school or every teacher should be the same and have to be exactly alike. And I don't, every student is not alike. They learn differently, they have different interests and ideas, they come from different backgrounds. So I don't like the direction that education has gone in, and that's, as my school changed and they removed what made it so great, removed our administrator and started just really turning it into a business. That's around the same time as that was happening, so is the major change in education as a whole. And that's why I'm no longer an educator, or I'm no longer, at least in the classroom. I still consider myself to be an educator. I'm just no longer see it as a profession that I can work in and still have that accomplishment, and that freedom that I had to really change lives. And to me, I don't see that in education as much anymore. I mean, I know there are still some schools and teachers that are like that, but overall, it's really not what I envisioned. It's not what I had as a child, where I really felt enthused about going to school and learning and challenged, and I was always so interested in what was that teacher going to show me, or what project were we going to start. So that's why I'm no longer in the classroom. I still, of course, am interested in education. I'm always learning and growing, but I'm no longer teaching for now, until maybe things change, or I find a school or someplace that is what really I want in education. And hopefully this video hasn't been too long, but that's my explanation. That's really why I'm no longer in the classroom. Thank you.